It had been a day of doing all-by-yourself things. Katie learned that being alone helps stories happen in her head. Orbie found out that you don't have to ask anyone if they want to make clay dinosaurs when you play by yourself. And they both discovered that even when you're doing things on your own, you still love your best friend very much. Orbie was out on the walkway baking his clay dinosaurs in the September sun. In her bedroom, Katie spied some bright-colored tissue paper at the top of her closet. She dragged a chair over to it and stood on her tippy toes. With a grunt and a stretch and a grab, she managed to pull the roll of paper down. There were turquoise, orange, yellow, and bright green sheets. They were the most beautiful colors she had ever seen. As the tissue paper fanned out in Katie's hand, she had a wonderful idea. She would make a tissue paper flower. It would be the prettiest one in the world. Outside on the steps, Mom told Orbie she was sorry to see the summer end. She'd missed the flowers. Up in her bedroom, Katie was working hard on her project. She used a pipe cleaner for the stem and twisted some beautiful leaves around it. Then at the top, she made a fabulous turquoise and orange and yellow flower. The big fat petals reached way out and then got smaller toward the center. Katie looked at it from the top. She looked at it from the bottom. She spun it around in her hand and looked at all sides. To Katie, the flower was the very most perfect thing she'd ever made. She was absolutely delighted. She hurried down the stairs to show Orbie, Mom, and Dad. They wouldn't believe how beautiful it was. Dad was at the bottom of the stairs looking at some mail. Katie hid the flower behind her back and asked Dad to guess what she had. Dad guessed an alligator that had lost his tooth. and then he guessed a flying hippo that had bumped his nose. Katie giggled. When Katie pulled out the flower, Dad gasped. It was fabulous. He told Katie it was a masterpiece, and they should keep it forever. Katie smiled. It felt grand to have made something that looked so perfect. Dad flung open the door with a great ta-ta, and Mom and Orbie turned to see what was up. Katie stepped out and held out her flower for all to see. Orbie was so impressed with Katie's work that he did 3 backflips, tooting all the way. Mom thought it was so perfect she couldn't say anything for a moment. And then she said, "Oh, Katie." That was it. Katie could tell it was a good, "Oh, Katie," and she was happy. It felt positively amazing to have made such a beautiful thing. Mom told Katie how she was feeling about the real flowers in her garden now that summer was ending. Now they would have the most beautiful flower in the whole world with them all winter. Katie looked at her mom and decided an astonishing thing: she would give the paper flower to her mom. Well, I probably don't have to tell you that Mom was thrilled and joyfully took the flower from Katie's hand. It was clear that she would have to be very careful with it. Orbie asked Katie to come down and see his dinosaurs. Katie hurried down the steps to admire them. Mom carefully placed the flower on the edge of the porch and went to get a drink. Katie really liked Orbie's brontosaurus, so Orbie ran up to get his picture book to show her what a good job he'd done in drawing it. Katie lay down flat on her tummy to take a closer look, and that was when it happened. The wind lifted the flower up into the air across the bushes at the front of the house, and up, up, up into the sky. Orbie peeked out the window to see how neat his dinosaur looked from upstairs, and he was very surprised to see the paper flower twirl by. He raced down to the porch and looked to see if he'd imagined it, but he hadn't. The flower was gone. Mom and Dad looked for it everywhere. But I have to tell you, even though it's really sad, Katie's fabulous flower was gone. Katie cried. Orbie gave her a big hug. Mom felt bad. She hadn't realized that the wind was strong enough to pick up the flower. She crouched down and told Katie how sorry she was. Mom told her it had been perfect and she would never forget it. This didn't really make Katie feel better. She felt she could never make another one like it. Mom hugged Katie. But Katie felt so upset, she pushed away from Mom's arms and ran upstairs to her bedroom. Everybody looked at each other. Flower was gone, and there was nothing that they could do about it. Orbie tried to make her another one, but it wasn't the same. Mom cooked one of her favorite treats for supper, but Katie didn't feel like eating. Dad walked around the neighborhood to see if the flower had fallen anywhere nearby, but it hadn't. Everybody in the whole house felt bad. That night, as Mom was kissing a sad little Katie goodnight, she had a thought. She told Katie that a good thing about her flower blowing all over the city was that a lot of people would get to admire it. Maybe the flower had sailed down and cheered up another little girl who was sad. Katie thought about this, and she told Mom that maybe then it blew to another mommy who was also sorry to see the summer flowers die. Orbie burbled from the closet that maybe a little boy had discovered it, blowing in the air, and caught it. Dad smiled and said that perhaps the little boy knew how special the flower was. Maybe he gave it to his best friend to make her happy again. Katie sat up in her bed. Her flower was gone, but it had created a whole story all by itself. Katie asked Mom and Dad if they'd write the flower story down, and they did. The next morning, Katie drew a picture of her flower at the bottom of the story. To this very day, Katie still has her flower story. It makes her happy to think that the little tissue paper flower had an adventure of its own. It's hard to find something happy about such a sad thing, but Katie did it. And I'm sure that when you have a little sad thing happen, you'll find something that can make you feel better too. After all, you are very clever.
Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? Children in other countries play lots of different kinds of games. Children in Mexico hit a piñata. In Africa, there's a bead game called Mancala. Just imagine trying to remember all the rules of all the games all over the world. That could make your head spin like a top.